Love God and love your neighbor. But today in the gospel, Jesus says, love your enemies. I wonder if Jesus somehow believed that his enemies and ours are really nice people. I don't think so. He understood that his enemies hated him, cursed him, and abused him. In fact, his enemies hung him on a cross. But I think Jesus also understood that loving your enemy wasn't just being a doormat for hate, for spousal or child abuse, for exclusion, for racism, for violence, for murder, for bigotry, greed, or war. For Jesus, love of God and neighbor and enemy was definitely a radical new way of living in this world. Living below the surface and going much deeper. Father Ron Rolheiser, the spiritual writer, asked if we have ever been muttering, maybe you have found yourself, muttering angrily or irritated on your cell phone and saying to someone, I'm stuck in traffic, okay? Ever happened to you? Well, guess what? Look in the rear view mirror. You are the traffic, okay? But we also look at the church. With the sex abuse and the nun abuse, we mutter and irritate. And I know for myself, at times, I am very, very disillusioned. Very disillusioned with the church. But guess what? I have to look in the rearview mirror because we are the church. And what can we do? We need to listen to Jesus. The measure with which you measure with will be given back to you. So in the gospel I hear love of God and love of neighbor, and today love of enemies. But love of enemies and those who do us wrong, those who somehow disillusion our dreams and disillusion our hopes and our trust. Somehow we still have to rely on the power of God's grace and the power of God's love to overcome and overpower all that is evil and all that is sick in our world. But love of God and love of enemies, that keeps it pretty general, doesn't it? It's pretty general. Love of God, love of God, love of neighbor. I can do that. Even love of enemy, I can do that. I'm really not surrounded by all that. And it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I can do that. Love God, love my neighbor, love my enemies. But even Jesus knew the law. Love of God, love of neighbor. But Jesus knew that entering this world, if we go out into this world and we do it with any passion in our life at all, it will make us uncomfortable. In fact, it made the people Jesus dealt with so uncomfortable, as we said, they crucified him. Why? Because Jesus gets specific. He doesn't just talk in generalities. It's easy to sit here, I think it is, and hear love of God, love of neighbor, even love of enemies. But when we get specific, it really takes us out of our comfort zones. It makes us uncomfortable. It nails us to that cross. Jesus gets in our faces. The author Stephen Matson writes, Jesus gets specific. Instead of saying all lives matter, Jesus gets in our faces and says all Samaritan lives matter. All children's lives matter. All Gentile lives matter. All Jewish lives matter. All women's lives matter. I wonder what he would say today. All black lives matter. All refugees' lives matter. All children and nuns' lives matter. All the children and nuns abused by priests and bishops matter. All homeless lives matter. I'll bet he would even look out at all of us and say, yes, and don't forget, each of your lives matter. God bless you.